Maybe infrastructure.
And infrastructure
Yes.
might be another one,
I think together.
but I don't think we need
Yeah.
to.
It's mentioned.
Yeah, we should introduce everybody to our
Oh, so
Yeah.
So I'd like to.
Look it down, and if they want us to do the other ones, we can, but.
Sorry, we're like strategizing right now.
Well, we have to shut the door to the woman, so we don't let anybody else in.
Okay, do we lock it too? Are we locked in now? No, okay.
That'd be safe. But anyways, good morning and welcome to the ag committee. We'll introduce ourselves and let's start with Cynthia.
Yeah, Brian Collmore, Senator from Rutland County.
Hi.
Hi.
Irene Roberts at Mid-North, which also includes your events. Oh, great. Yeah, that's right. Not you. Thank you.
Brian Campion, Bennington County, see everybody.
Rich Wesley, Whale District. And I'm Bobby Starr from Orleans County and represent a few towns down in Caledonia County as well. So it's great to see all of you here, and Denise, we've run into each other over the years quite a few times.
Yeah.
And I guess you're gonna lead off this morning on the Lake Champlain issue.
Well, first, I just want to thank you for having us come in. One of our charges as the Citizens Advisory Committee is to present our action plan every year to the legislature. My name is Denise Smith, and I have the distinct pleasure of being the current chair of the CAC on the future of Lake Champlain. And I'm really happy to be joined here by my colleagues, who I'm going to have introduce themselves right now. I'll start over here with Bob.
I'm Bob Fisher. I'm the water quality superintendent for South Burlington and I live in Barry.
I'm Lori Fisher, I'm a CAC representative from Williston, I'm also executive director for the Lake Champlain Committee.
Yeah, Wayne Elliott, I'm a resident of South Burlington, consulting engineer with Aldrin and Elliott, and grew up in Newport.
And I'm Judy Dark, staff support for the committee.
Grew up in Newport on the farm.
Yes, I did.
My dad grew up in Orleans on a farm,
Yeah.
so yeah,
Generations.
generations.
Oh, neighbor to me.
Yeah, the town of Orleans, the Bellavos that lived there for years, so. Well, thank you again for having us join you and for your memory. We are here to talk today about our action plan. We really want to focus on the ag section and probably the infrastructure sections. However, if you have any questions about any of the other pieces of this, we would love to be able to weigh in on those as well. I think what I'd like to start with is, as we know, the climate is changing. It's not only impacting our downtowns and our river corridors where there's built infrastructure, it's also really impacting our farmers. And I'm sure you've heard that as well.
Yeah, many times on this winter, especially last summer, last fall, even.
Weather, they can't get out on their field at the same time, they can't plant.
And Eric Clifford is a member here also.
Oh,
He's not
yeah.
here today.
Yeah, Eric Clifford's one of our CAC members, has been for years.
For years, more than me, at least 15.
I think one of the things that we just want to acknowledge is really how the farmers are responding and how our agriculture community is really partnering with water quality right now. We've been really, feels like there's been some mental model shifts that are happening kind of at the deep rooted level where the farmers are acknowledging and wanting to participate in some of the programs. We also know that specifically like pay for improvement programs or pay for performance programs, it takes, 5 to 10 years for people to get on board and to attract meaningful participation from the farmers. So we just want to encourage, any kind of legislative action to really support those programs going forward. We also want to really celebrate some of the Vermont agricultural water quality partnerships that are happening with the conservation districts, AAFM, DC, NRC, and UVM Extension. We've seen some really nice progress happening there. I used to run the Friends of Northern Lake Champlain up in our region of Franklin County. And there was a lot of work done by the local NGOs and conservation districts to work with farmers on meeting their needs, but also starting to think about how to meet the water quality needs of the region and improving our communities. what we want to emphasize on your action plan, today is really that we want to support sustainable agriculture, consistent regulatory enforcement. What I will say is we know that ag is in transition. And that transition's started happening years ago and is continuing to happen today. In order to do that, we need to accelerate the diversification of value-added agricultural products and support our producers. In Franklin County, the dairy industry is an economic driver for our region. I think you all know that. We really want to protect our farms, our farm economy, and our environment. And to do that, we need to support farms through investments in the specialized equipment. And there's been a lot of success with specialized equipment, which, I mean, I can speak to my region of the state and what's happened there. We need to offer full funding of programs offered to the agricultural community, and enhance infrastructure for local distribution of agricultural products. So those are really what we see as needs to be able to support our farmers as they're making a transition from the current state to a future state.
Yeah, no-till and
Yeah,
you know,
no-till,
working out pretty well.
soil compactions continues
Yeah.
to be an issue, but
Yeah,
how are we investing in and supporting our farmers and making the needed investments they need to make to be able to support?
injection, manure injection systems. Now, does your St. Albans area, do they, their conservation districts own any of that equipment? So that if a farmer isn't big enough to buy one of those machines, because all those are expensive.
We have extension of where we live with the direction of Heather Darby, has a lot of that equipment or has received grants to purchase that equipment.
Yeah.
And I think our conservation district supports that as well. But yeah, and I think at different regions of the state, there's different partners that partner with people. Yeah, but no, you're right, the no-till equipment and that is really, really important. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is the full funding in the governor's recommended budget? Do you know?
I'm gonna look to my partners and I do not know
The full funding.
full funding for
for
what
what?
specifically.
Well, in your piece here, it says full funding of programs offered to the agricultural community. So I didn't know whether that meant
Staffing.
there was a piece in the budget that reflected that.
A lot of that running, I think, comes right through the ag.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
It's a great question.
we're gonna have to chase that, you know.
Yep.
Because a lot of the grants were set up from one-time money, you know, federal money. So we've gotta pay a lot more attention to that because the train doesn't come to Vermont.
Seems like we're gonna be facing that issue a lot this year.
Yeah, we are.
You know, and I thought some of these funds were dedicated for this. I think the formula that we set up more than before COVID and before the federal.
Yeah, we'll have Davidson in and.
Yeah, we should have somebody in.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other thing that we are asking for is to revisit the 2017 memorandum of understanding between the Agency of Natural Resources and Ag and Markets, to update expectations and clarify responsibilities, improve communications and establish accountability metrics. There has been more work done between AFM and DEC, and we've noticed some improvement in communication. We still feel like the people on the ground are a little confused, though, in terms of who's doing what and who they need to go to. But there has been improvement, I would say, under the Scott administration and the work that's been done currently between the two agencies, but it's just something we always want to pay attention to. And make sure that we're tracking and confirming. At one point, the CAC and others in the state really wanted to separate that relationship between DEC and AAFM and just give everything to DEC, including the regulation of the farms. Now we're really wanting to just make sure that the memorandum of understanding is still working well, for both the agency of, for the farm, basically for the farmers. So the farmers know what is expected of them, what they need to do, and how they can help reduce the phosphorus loads to Lake Champlain.
Yeah, that,
And I think collaboration, in my mind, is much better than, separation.
oh, yeah, that. DEC basically wanted to steal all that authority. And farmers, I mean, they're getting line down here to come in and beat up on that because the ag agency, and if you go from the ag agency to the conservation districts, you know, they love the conservation districts and get a lot of good work done through them. And you say, well, why do you like those folks so well? Well, it's because they don't come in with a big stick and beat up on them. And they talk the farmer's language. So then you go to the ag department and that's way better than it used to be. You know, they come in and work with us and help us correct anything that we're doing wrong. And DC never worked. I haven't had one farmer contact me and say, boy, those are great people. They were here and they really helped me do this. And they tell you, well, keep them away from me. It's all they want to do is find us and you know, they don't help you straighten out the issue. So, no, I think all of that crew should work together and it's like
Our
anything
position.
else.
Our position has evolved. I've been at the CAC for over 15 years, and I believe, you know, it generally doesn't evolve a lot like aquatic bases. I mean, we're Quebec, New York, and Vermont. And but we have, you know, we're a group, so it's a consensus when we come at this. We don't all agree to the same thing. And I would certainly say that previously we were like, the majority was like, we need to get rid of the MOU and just give it to DEC. Our thinking has evolved totally, where if you see here now, it's just more collaboration is what we're pushing now. More collaboration, not just about not getting rid of the MOU.
And we're seeing, oh, go ahead, Lori. You go.
I do just want to clarify, I mean, we have emphasized revisiting the MOU. There are concerns with the way that has worked. The differences in terms of how A&R and ag operate and how they view certain definitions like a non-point source, which is really fundamental to ag enforcement. So I would say that's where we're aligned as a CAC, but we're coming at this from different perspectives, and it has been a long priority of the CAC to reinforce that coordination, make sure that ag requirements are being effectively enforced, but also, as you noted, Senator, that there needs to be adequate staffing for both programs.
Yeah, I want to just add my 2 cents, and I agree with the chair 100%. We, in this committee, and this is my 8th year here, so I've seen examples of when it would appear that the A&R group and the ag are almost at cross purposes, unfortunately. And the MOU, I think, was an attempt to sort of deal with that meshing challenge that sometimes doesn't happen enough. And I'm a big fan of the conservation district. So to me, they're at the top of the list in terms of, a farmer will welcome them onto the farm and try to help. And I'd love to see us be able to throw some more money in that direction, because again, as Senator Starr mentioned, they solve problems together. And so
Councilman.
Yeah, that, yeah, and state government shouldn't work any different than this committee or your group. If you work on an issue and everybody can kind of come to the middle, you usually get a lot better results than, well, I'm gonna stick with this and that's it, and by damn if you don't like it, tough luck. Those, it doesn't work good that way. Yeah,
Did you go to Washington, please?
yeah, well,
Cause I go there yearly for the flying and everything.
we know what comes out of there and
I just wanna add one thing, cause I don't think we talked about it yet, but we do think,
We should have.
the farmers and the people, the large landowners in the state, especially ones who still have land and agricultural use, can really help resolve some of the climate issues that are occurring in our state. Whether it's for water attenuation or forestry, or soil improvement, to store water better. And so, I think there's a lot of opportunity for this committee to look at, like, how do we, whether it's, ecosystem services that we're reimbursing farmers for, or whatnot, but I think that's another, thing that and climate is throughout our action plan. But we do know natural solutions, to the increased rainfalls, and I'm gonna turn it to Bob to talk a little bit more about their infrastructure. Or no, Wayne to talk a little bit more about infrastructure. Just because we do, he'll give you some stats in terms of like the water that just came down, and how that impacted our state, but I think there's a big opportunity for agriculture right now, and they have come as a partner in water quality, and I think the climate change, they can come.
There's so much
Even-
pressure,
there's so much pressure on them.
especially if real estate values go through the roof. I mean, you see, I'm a ski coach at Killington too. I'm the baddest freestyle coach you'll ever see, top team. And
You're lying today, 'cause I like
I've
it.
used that forever. Yeah, no, that's been at least, I've been there 23 years. I have been the oldest.
The baddest.
True. They're a very fit group. Nonetheless, as I drive down there, you see, there's this, Vermont is the most septic tanks by population in the state, in the country, 55%. And, a lot of these people are moving there and, they're building big mansions on a hill and there's more forest fragmentation, more. I'm in favor of, compact villages with farmland around it. I mean, if you want to take it to the extreme, building in core, I've said this before, and everyone, you build one building that holds 1 million people, you put us all in it with a closed loop membrane system, water like the space shuttle, you fix every problem there is. Now, do I want to live there? No, I have a beautiful 18-9 house, but that's building in, and then you can mitigate for PFAS, everything. You all just fixed right there on the spot. You have a few farms on the outside, you're good. That's building in the extreme. We seem to be going the opposite way. The farmland is just so valuable. I mean, look at Eric, he's 7th generation. His daughter's got a really good job in Boston. She's not coming back. So he's, it's just, there's gonna be more and more pressure. And as the land value just goes through the roof, there's more and more septic tanks with more, ground pollution from them, PFAS, everything's coming right into the ground right there. And, they don't treat for that. That's land application on a statewide scale. So I feel for the farmers. The pressure is just gonna continue as the value of the land goes up and up. Good for them in the end maybe, but no, it's like I live in Lake Tahoe and I knew people, the guy next door to me, he stayed there for 1 more year in Incline, his property taxes were 56 and he made 58. And he said, because his wife had died and his daughter was the captain of the basketball team. So he said, I'm getting driven out rich. I have to move because I can't afford here. I'm out millions of dollars, but I built this house in Lake Tahoe and this is where I wanted to retire. Now I also, lived in Buffalo and I saw the opposite. My buddy's dad bought a house for 32 and 72 and sold it for 8. So it could be worse. But nonetheless, the pressure on the farmers and everything and the increased stormwater from all the land value is just, I don't know how you deal with it, Arlene.
yeah, it's rough in time about water quality and trying to do the right thing. Last year, we did a little pilot bill in regards to virtual fencing. And, we talked about how it'd save the farmer money. He wouldn't have to go out every day and move his spinach for rotational grazing, and it would be better for the ground. Well, we got a report earlier this year on, how did that vertical fencing work out? Oh, it worked out good. If we want to go over to the brook and fence side out, we, put the line up around and so the animals never go in the brook. And also, we have, meadows will pond up and have ponds and where they could put a virtual fence around that wetlands so that the cow or the beef cows can't go in there and tread that all up, because cows, when on a hot day, love to stand in water and cools them
Is
down.
this like a dog fence or something?
Yeah, so it's this.
I'm not familiar.
Oh, it's
So-
all done, they have a
On
A
your
little
collar,
collar,
They have
just
a
like a
collar.
dog.
And you put it on your phone.
Oh, wow.
you put it on your
Great.
phone and you sit right in the office, and it
How many-
also has little dots for each animal.
Wow.
So you can see where they are.
So if one should happen to get
Wander out.
through the thing, they can see where it is and go and retrieve
Wow.
it.
Interesting.
It's, the problem they had, and I'm glad we did a pilot project, is, to really be able to sell it, to last a whole season, they need stronger batteries.
Sure.
Because they ran out of batteries, early, in the fall. So, but, you think about that, like we want to keep milk cows, all cows out of the brooks and to improve the water quality. I mean, it would work pretty good.
I love the innovation with that, that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's the type of thing that we're hoping to see is more of that innovation and investment in the
Wow.
transition of ag, because that's where
Place with bad water isn't worth it.
it's not.
I mean, you can't even give them away.
It's true, like the farm in Maine and
Yeah.
I know Wayne's.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you wanna come sit here with me? That would be,
All right.
have a hot seat, please.
Well, just one.
Very warm in here, that's why we keep the meeting short, right? So to talk a little bit about the natural developed infrastructure. This obviously affects the ag side, it affects our communities and everything across the board. What we had the last 6 months just kind of reinforced, the potential long-term impacts of climate change. And our needed commitment to flood mitigation resilience. One of our priorities here, you'll see in the plan, was the state must continue to prioritize investments to support adaptive, resilient, compact self-help Vermont communities. In addition to that, it's not just developed infrastructure, but we want to make sure we protect, maintain, expand natural features, because that's really where we can get the most benefit moving forward. If we get these flood events, we want to get that place of water, give a place for that water to go temporarily. So it's important that we don't lose, we need to maintain, the headwaters, the river corridors, the floodplains, wetlands, and those buffers, because we need to get the water a place to go. We can't continue our past mistakes like we have the last 30 or 40
We
years.
like it on Main Street and State.
Yeah, I live in Barry, yeah.
It's still a disaster.
Oh, yeah?
So some facts of interest for the July 9th and 10th floods. We had about 4.5 inches of rainfall over those couple of days. That varied a little bit around the state. Typically, so I'm an engineer consultant, we use like 2.7 inches of rain, so that well exceeded that criteria. Had 200 billion gallons of water enter the lake. This is the one that's kind of probably the more disappointing, but just the environmental damage. We made great strides in the lake with phosphorus removal. The job the wastewater plants have been doing, farmers have been doing. About half of the phosphorus load entered the lake on those 2 days of what we typically would expect for an entire year. So,
So if you tested, it went way up.
yes.
So,
And of course, you're aware of this, we had 33 municipal wastewater systems, about 19 community water systems. You know, we had wastewater infrastructure that was non-operable for quite a period of time, wastewater treatment plants that weren't functional, pipes broken, that kind of stuff. Fortunately, a lot of that's back to at least mostly normal operation. The lake level reached 98.3, so 100 feet is the flood stage, so that's pretty rare to see that happen, you know, if it's summer.
Has it been that like before or years ago?
Well, so interesting enough, I'll just jump ahead here, but, you know, we thought we were out of the woods and we had this December 18th event occur. The lake level went up 2 feet with that event, so we got up to about 99.1 feet, just barely under the 100 foot. The lake level hadn't reached that level, the prior to spring, so it didn't get that high in May of last year, and it didn't get that high in May of the previous year, so just amazing amount of water that comes in there. One of the things that we're kind of focused on as I was putting this together is, obviously, there was a lot of, you know, environmental impacts. One of the things that really hurt the state, in addition to the devastation of the infrastructure, farm, fields, you know, households, businesses, you know, the effects on the, what we call the recreational economy. You know, we spent a lot of time on, you know, access to these receiving waters, contact recreation, swimming, boating, and everything like that. But, you know, we went through quite a period of time this summer where you couldn't boat safely. The water quality wasn't acceptable to swim. You know, that affects tourism, that affects people coming out to visit the summer, you know, in addition to all the, you know, businesses that were out in areas of failure. So, I spent a lot of time at work working with combined sewer overflow communities, worked with Rockland. And I was going through some weather data. We have these reports that are due the end of January, and I was just, these numbers just kind of blew me away. So this was in central Vermont. So we typically get 41 inches of rainfall in a given year. They got over 60 inches of rainfall.
Yeah,
Was
is
it-
that total for the
The
year?
entire year, yep. The difficulty with that is that over 2/3 of that occurred from early July through the end of the year. So it wasn't, you know, typically when you look at that data, it all kind of evens it out. Like it doesn't get too far from that 41 inches. You'll have some drier months, weather months, but for, you know, to see that amount of rainfall the last 6 months, it's just nothing. I've done this for 40 years, never seen any data like this.
Brian has a question.
thanks, Mr. Did we use a lot of, were ARPA funds used at all, federal funds to deal with some of these wastewater systems?
They are, yeah.
They are, they're still being
Yes,
used.
they are.
Okay, great.
That's a great program. Its money's being put into Virgin's, Rutland, of course.
I know it's such a
Hartford,
huge
yes,
expense. Yeah,
Yeah.
I just want to make sure that.
Yeah, the thing with
Thank you.
those, though, we need to be mindful of is, you know, I've worked with these a lot of years. We're not gonna eliminate them. Sure, look at the events we've had this past year. We don't have enough time and money to really ever eliminate those kind of effects of those. It's not great. None of us think that's a good thing to happen, but from a water quality standpoint, those overflows occur in the rivers and everything else isn't great. We're not in this, you know, any kind of contact. So we've got a lot of other aged infrastructure, a lot of other things that we need to spend the money on versus spending millions and millions to, you know, eliminate these overflows.
But that, yeah, I can see where Burlington's wastewater treatment facilities are down by the lake.
Yeah.
All downhill to it. But you take like Montpelier.
Yep.
There's this up by the railroad
Yep.
station. Well, all that water that came into the city, if that had stayed in the river.
Yep.
Down to Bolton Flats or down south of here where those big meadows are and that, if that went onto that land instead of over on State Street and Main Street.
Yep.
Just think of the amount of junk you're gonna keep out of.
Yep.
Out of that, and it would filter out down on the big fields south of here. And we wouldn't have that problem in Montpelier, but for some reason, nobody wants to touch a river.
Yeah.
They wanna let the water run where it may. Well, I'll tell you, back on the farm, if we didn't clean the ditches every 10 or 15 years, you had a lot of really wet farmland that you really couldn't grow good crops on. So you get the drag line in, clean the ditches, and you'd go back to growing good crops again. But
We have to be careful with some of that because a lot of things we can't do in Vermont, we never get permitted into in other parts of the country. Like I'm working on some of the wastewater plants for the flood resilience and it's like Johnson, so that, FEMA's there, he's like, well, let's put a berm around it, or let's build a sheet pile wall. Well, can't do that here because what you're gonna do is you're gonna move that water back upstream, so by creating that solution, improving that situation, we're creating other problems upstream, so we need to be a little more careful and thoughtful about how we're looking at these mitigation measures.
Yeah, it's a shame that I was the chief operator in Montpelier for many years at the wastewater plant here, so I'm quite familiar with the Montpelier system. When I left 8 years ago, 23% of the pipes are pre-1923. But I run the South Burlington, we have two very advanced, because we've, fairly wealthier community compared to Burlington, and two very advanced facilities where we microfiltration, we produce electricity off our digesters, et cetera. Nonetheless, we're putting out almost drinking water, our phosphorus, we put out 340 pounds for 24,000 people, because we do Colchester last year of phosphorus. That's like 6 houses in the septic tank. And I watched that extra 100,000 I spent getting this down to 0.04 from our limit of 0.2 or 150,000. It's gone in seconds as the river turns to chocolate. It's just, we're still gonna treat to that level, but it's just, in seconds, everything I did is just gone.
well, I don't wanna hold you up.
No, that's fine.
But 10, 20 years ago, Winooski was gonna build a dome over the city. Well, maybe we'll have to build one over all Vermont.
Well,
That's
you go back to my one.
Yeah, maybe for this.
So I miss the days when you used to be able to go up to JP Thanksgiving weekend and have it 60 or 80% open. The reality is with warmer temperatures, and this is exactly what's happening, is we're getting more rainfall precipitation, so the lake levels and everything are higher. We're not getting the snowfall, the snowpack on the skier, and kills me. I'm riding up the cliff, the middle of January, and you kind of see bare ground. So the point taken there is I'm really hoping that what's happened the last 6 months is not the new normal, but it probably is somewhere in between. So the days of going back to where we just got 40 inches of rain, we got 12 or 15 events with half an inch is probably not what we're going to see moving forward. So we need to be mindful of that. Spend the money wisely and make good decisions on especially infrastructure, community redevelopment, and the ag side. Just a couple things. I know these don't really affect the ag side, but one of the things that we encourage, I know some of these communities are having a hard time getting reimbursed for FEMA. The money's coming slow. They're in a tough spot for town meeting. The governor, assured that he's, they're all gonna be made whole, we get reimbursed, but it's just taking a little bit more time. And the other thing that's happening there too is, they're getting close, if they haven't already, to that 120 million, we want to get to FEMA reimbursement, it's up to 90%, from the 75 to 90%. And then obviously use those funds moving forward, to address some of these mitigations, like issues with schools. Okay.
We did a bill last week and the week before. It passed last week that if a municipality blocks the taxes If a person goes in, wants their taxes abated and the town agrees to
Yeah.
it, they aren't gonna have to pay that to the ed fund, so that should help
Yep.
some.
Yeah.
And, I think that was a pretty good.
It's also cash flow that a lot of these communities just haven't gotten reimbursed yet too, and they're just been spent money over the last 6 months. That's gonna work out. It takes some time.
Yeah. If we all paid our bills as good as the feds pay their bills,
Yeah.
we'd have a lot of business and people really hollering at us.
Good. Any other questions? I don't know, did you want to, anything that was?
Anything that you wanna add?
Yeah.
Or your,
Well, where are we with time? Because we didn't give you an overview of aquatic invasive species in recreation. I can do that very quickly if you're interested, but we also want to make sure we answer any questions you have. So,
What, do you have a meeting that you're at?
not
No, we're
until
good till
1 o'clock,
1
not until 1.
So it's really your.
Yeah,
we have lunch with you.
Yeah. We locked you in.
No, we're fine now. We've got, if we get out at 5 up, we're fine.
And so I will take much less time than that, but just hit some highlights in terms of aquatic invasive species as well as recreation, which are very much, interwoven in terms of, the potential effects that one has on the other. And also, certainly climate change that everyone else who's talked about here has a big impact on both of these. So our priority for aquatic invasive species is to really reinvest and invest more vigorously in prevention, because we humans are the real conveyance for aquatic invasive species in terms of their how they get from one place to another. In Lake Champlain, we have 51 aquatic invasives. They have tremendous implication for ecological change. So more than anything else that's affected the lake, you've seen tremendous change by aquatic invasive species, because they're sort of their profile as a species is that they generally outcompete the natives because they didn't grow up in this region. They tend to have a lot of fecundity. They will overproduce so they are going to, by the fact that they are often can exist in poor water conditions too, or in a full diversity of habitats, that often is one of the reasons that they have such a pronounced effect. And then the fact that they are such aggressive reproducers, and they often prey on our native species. So again, they put much more pressure on. And we are seeing at the time when they're increasing. So we have 51 in Lake Champlain. We're connected. Lake Champlain is connected to all sorts of water bodies which have more invasive species through the inland waterway system. So the Hudson River, which is we're connected to through the South Lake Champlain and the canal system, has nearly twice as many invasives. The Great Lakes nearly 4 times as many. And of the species whose origins we know about in Lake Champlain, more than half have come through the southern canal system. Yeah, we were also have an issue with the St. Lawrence, but remember Lake Champlain flows north, okay? And so, we're very concerned about that, and prevention is key. Once you get an invasive, because of that profile I mentioned before about how aggressive they are, they're usually here to stay. So then you're constantly putting in money for investment in managing them. So that's the situation. For example, water chestnut, an aggressive plant that's been in Lake Champlain since I think around the 1940s. That we've been able, for the most part, to keep it at bay through ongoing managing and harvesting. There's both mechanical harvesting and hand pulling that happens. And as long as you keep up with the funding, then that plant is staying put below the South Lake. But for several years, over the course of many decades, there was time when that funding wasn't kept up. And so the program was compromised, and that plant has moved north. So now we have species that, we have water chestnut, where we're seeing in the Missisquoi National Wildlife Refuge and other pockets where we're trying to really aggressively manage them. But that's just one example. If you lay off, the gas on this in terms of investment, you're gonna lose something. And, Senator Cappy, you have a question?
Yeah, thanks. And I'm sorry to
No, no,
interrupt,
no.
but can you say a little bit about that prevention when ships, I suspect they're real
Valid.
ships,
Yeah,
are coming up? Is there any from the Hudson? Is there anything
Well, so
that?
Vermont DEC and New York DEC have been working, and we've been involved
right.
with
There's
how they operate the locks.
and that's one aspect of it. There's also a boat steward program. So
No,
education is really key. So there's the Lake Champlain Basin program, and Katie is our staff person, but she works for that institution. They run a boat steward program in New York and Vermont, where
Right.
they're at those access areas, prioritizing those high profile access areas to educate people about the prevention. Everybody knows in terms of who has a boat or gets schooled on clean, drain,
Yeah,
dry.
yeah.
But it only takes one person.
Right, I
These
know.
can get
So
in
hard.
by intentional, deposits of them. There's also boat transport is really, really important. So that's why we're talking about, our priorities are to have increased investment because we've lost staffing over the years. And we do not have the staff that can really keep up with all the education that needs to happen. So we're recommending a new funding source involving, a boat decal for both motorized, non-motorized recreation, mandatory watercraft inspection. We do have some stations around, the state. They're typically volunteer staff. So that's another issue is just, the capacity to do that, but there is funding for both I think there's a 50-50 split with Army Corps of Engineers funds to do a high profile inspection station near a border area, which would be really important. So that's another thing we want to push. And then potentially considering a live bait ban such as they have in Quebec. So you're avoiding all those vectors. Or trying to mitigate them to get at that issue. And then back to the canal, through you probably know that Round Goby was discovered in 2021, very aggressive fish, a small fish that is one of the attributes of this fish is that it feeds both during the day and during the night. So therefore, instead of reproducing once a year or less frequently, it reproduces multiple times a year. So there's great concern about that moving into Lake Champlain. And it is in the New York Canal system. So there's a high degree of focus on that, looking at flushing systems. They're now doing dual flushing. And now instead of if you're coming up through the lock system, as you were talking about, Senator Campion, you have to schedule your lock and they are restricting that time. But we're very concerned, and some of us, my organization was pitching that we should temporarily close the locks until we can control this. So we're also looking at barrier dams. There is a study and there was federal funding for putting in a barrier on the southern canal system. But we're very far away from implementation on that.
I know.
Point around Gobi is not.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
There's.
Right, Round Goby isn't in Lake Champlain, but it is, there's
At our
a great
door.
concern that it could be, and it would be absolutely devastating to Lake Champlain fishery if it got here.
So the bulk washing, that it doesn't happen
It,
all the time?
no, it happens more voluntarily. This is also why the basin program, the boat steward program is really important because at the access areas. They've trained stewards to talk to boaters, to do informal inspections too. They've run interference on some invasives as well. My organization runs an aquatic invasive patrollers program that we piloted last year on Lake Champlain. We're going to expand it this year. But all that is privately funded. We're funded through a modest grant from the Basin program. So, but at the same time, we have lost funding in our state agencies. And what we have is one staff person and then temporary staff. So you're not building that capacity, that institutional knowledge. At the same time, pressure from aquatic invasives is increasing, and also recreational use is increasing, and we want that to increase. And that's the other quick point I want to make. If there's time, another pitch from the CAC and our action plan is really to expand equitable public access and recreation. And certainly we support the VORAC and the initiatives there and that funding source, but really want to see a focus on, particularly in the South Lake, in Lake Champlain, where there are very limited access areas. There aren't swimming opportunities. And our stewards, our environmental stewards, there's a direct link between your experience in the outdoors and your opportunity there and your sense of stewardship. And, we really need to foster that, but we want to see a greater investment.
I just mentioned, my limited experience is between Maine and Lake George. They just seem so much more.
Lake George.
Yeah,
Yeah.
You're not, in the lakes
Yeah.
in Maine, you are not gonna roll that boat out without
exactly.
people there who are getting paid, checking it.
Absolutely.
And so I do feel like we're behind the eight ball on
We
this. one.
totally
Yeah.
agree. That's why we're seeing a need for mandatory inspection. It's a wonderful opportunity and privilege to use our waterways, but we
Yeah.
have a responsibility and need to have our boats
Yep.
thoroughly inspected.
I know we're almost out of time.
It's also a capacity issue.
Yeah.
Like if you go to the Mounts Bay on a Saturday or Sunday, you got one person there, and you got, they're pretty wide with their boats, and
Yeah.
people are not very patient, so.
Yes.
The last part of our thing is contaminants, PFAS.
You're both.
Yep, sure. I'll say it really quick. I'm sure, so I operate two large wastewater facilities and we produce EQ biosolids, I'd say. And I agreed to James Ellers, the pollution network is here doing it at noon, so I'm gonna go get beat up over there. That's fine. But there's also, there's all sorts of, PFAS is the big issue of the day, but it's everywhere and it's ubiquitous. And it needs to deal with. It's like I say, septic tanks, that's PFAS land application, it's everywhere. We're the large 55% of Vermonters, the most in the country by population on septic tanks, and that's not being treated there. Salt is the next one to come around, chloride. People don't even realize that, Harley. There's probably gonna be a TMDL, like Newski and whatnot, force for chloride continues to go up and up and up. I really was not that cognizant, even though I was a federal fishery biologist years ago. I talked to the stormwater people and they're like, yeah, we're already reaching levels where it's starting to affect the fish. And most 75% of it's private. So even like in South Burlington, where we have computerized things, we're trying to limit salt. You tell a private person to do it, well, it's also a liability to them. They don't use salt, someone falls and breaks their leg, So this is another huge issue coming along, and which was not that easy to solve. If you put treatment on the stormwater facility, then now you're building like wastewater. Oh my God, that's expensive. I know, wastewater is expensive. And, like biosolids, your average, male of you produce about 1 pound a day for, about 186 pound male. So I probably produce more, I eat a lot. But you can figure that's 365 pounds a year. It's gotta go somewhere. And, there's incineration, there's none in Vermont, never has been, very expensive. So you pretty well wipe that out. We land apply now, but we're not even hardly going to agriculture. We're mostly going to go with ECI. It's about a 5% mix. You don't even see the PFAS levels. And we went to the Swanton Airport. We're doing the Burlington Airport, doing I-89 because it's a fertilizer. Can't do that because it could have microplastics and PFAS in it. So fine. So now I'll landfill it. Instead of driving 5 miles, I'm now going to put incredible amounts of greenhouse gas, dragging it up to Coventry where it's also going to off gas, and then the leachate's going to come around.
Well, but it don't go away, does it?
No, you put it in there and it's just gonna off gas in there and it's going to, you've gotta do something with it. And plus, if you
Wow.
stop land applying it with like the farms and whatnot, you now have to import that phosphorus. So that's
But if you
more.
don't
greenhouse gas.
use it in the first place.
Well, it's mostly yeah.
I mean, they were telling us last week, it's even in our clothing.
Oh, yeah.
manufacturing.
Oh, PFAS, it's everywhere.
Yeah.
It's everywhere.
It's
And
unreal.
it's on top of Mount Everest, they found it. I mean, it's everywhere. But, well, we're still here. I'm not saying it's a good thing, but, you know, it is what it is. So what are you gonna do? I made this point many times. So you can't landfill. If a leachate comes around, goes in there, you can't do that. So really, there's only one last solution, and because I have the intestinal fortitude to do what's right, internal composting. I haven't gone like in a week and I don't feel well. But I'm looking for other solutions. I'm more than open. You can't landfill, you can't land apply it. That's all I got is left. That 365 pounds gotta go somewhere. So, you know, there's no easy solution. Certainly, if you just put it all in the landfill, there's landfill capacity issues. And a huge increase in greenhouse gases, plus all the importation of it. So there's no real easy solutions to anything.
Well, the junk, everything goes to Coventry then. It,
The leachate
a
comes.
lot of it gets trucked back down to Montpelier
Yeah.
here and over to Plattsburgh.
Yeah.
But some of that runs down into South Bay. You know, cause it doesn't matter
Just-
if you build a beautiful new swimming pool. You spend hundreds of thousands and thousands of dollars, that baby's gonna leak someday.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's, so there's no easy solutions, and really what we need to do is, help reduce the rainfall in this state. If we can do that in this committee, that would really help us out a lot.
Well,
The
the
dome,
Indians
maybe?
used to do rain dances to get it to rain.
I'll take whatever, like, I'm a Killington coach, and they've already stopped all overtime. They've already, because they lost Martin River, they lost the thing, the Wally Barn's closed on Tuesdays now. The local people that are just trying to get by are all dying. Even though there's more and more people there, it's crowded as can be. The rain and snow last Saturday, we got there froze, and all the lifts barely opened, and there was people all standing around. Martin Luther was worse with frozen lifts. And just, they spent a lot of money there for really torturous things, at least I could pay the coach, but.
My cousin owned the Wobbly Barn for years.
Really? Oh, wow.
I don't know how long you've been going
I've
there.
been going there since, well, I lived out west for 12 years, but I've been there since the 80s, yes.
Yeah, Jack Jagger.
Oh, I think I know, yeah.
He's my first cousin.
Okay.
Well, I didn't get this craziness from,
So once again, just a lot of, more problems, contaminants, obviously. And biosolids are a huge issue, and if the solution is ship it somewhere else, ship it to Ohio, that's no solution. What are you gonna do? Send it all to Bangladesh in the end, for incredible amounts of
good
money?
idea.
Sure, I think they're already polluting that country pretty well.
So, feel free to cut him off.
Yeah,
So we got that.
Anytime.
You got that.
Thank you, thank you.
I'll go down the hall.
Thank you, Wendy.
Yeah.
Any other
We're right
questions?
on
for-
time.
Thank you so much for
Sure.
hosting
Thank
us today
Thank
and
you.
letting us
We'll
come
see you
and
next
speak to your
Yeah.
committee.
You'll all be fixed.
Let's hope we don't get as much rain between now and next year when we
Yes.
see if we got this patch here.
Yeah, when you run a wastewater facility and you got 34 pump stations, I look at my graphs, when it starts to rain, I can sleep on it.
Oh.
Cause me trouble.
Have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
You too.
Yeah,
Thanks.
and
Bye-bye.
healthy, everybody. Bye. Thanks for-
Hi, thank you, and thank you for the extra time.
Yes.
We're gonna see you. Thanks for.
Sitting here.
Some cost. That's part.
Yeah, so you got.